All right, we are back to Bands and Blades. This is session 8. Last session we had Operation Western Peak. You guys fought some bandits, very exciting. You blew up a several hundred-year-old bridge, as is wont to do in some of these games and exciting adventures. Um, you did wind up getting the merchants to Westlake, and they have agreed to let you get some of their stores. So the mission reward for this mission, actually, we'll get into rewards in a second, because technically you're supposed to do the secondary mission first. Um, but before we get too into that, Adramir, our medic, as part of a devil's bargain, got marked by Breaker, uh, which I don't need to expand on that at the moment, but it's just interesting and something I want to keep like in the room and in the space. Oh, agenda for today, secondary mission and campaign phase. And if we have time for free play, or if we have an interest in free play, we'll maybe explore Sunstrider Camp a little bit, or revisit some old NPCs. And yeah, should be a pretty chill session today. Famous last words. So yeah, with that all in mind, yeah, we do need horses. We need some ponies. Secondary mission. Let me get back over. No, I am in the mission phase. Um, our secondary mission was a very fun one. Operation Screaming Tower. I'm like, I knew there was a very intimidating name. Operation Screaming Tower, which is not ominous at all. Um, where the marshal decided to send our sniper and officer, along with the Silver Stags, back into occupied Plainsworth, because uh, through various channels it became known to the Legion that Dame Bella Bachler, the Orate book merchant, had either been left or chose to stay in Plainsworth as it was being taken over by the undead. But she sent word to the Legion that she has valuable intel, um, or she left it in her cart. And taking this to be good enough to follow up on, the Legion decided to send a squad out. So, secondary missions, we only get the engagement roll, and we look to our marshal. Let me get the engagement roll pulled up here. All right. So, Marshall, before every mission, assemble the engagement roll by asking the following: Are all on the mission oath sworn to the Legion? Uh,
For the secondary, I think so, yes.
yes. I don't know of anybody not on it who's not oath sworn. So, yeah, you get one die. Did the commander spend one intel to give you foresight and info? The commander had no intel to spend, so we already know the answer to that. That's negative. Is everyone on the mission a specialist or a soldier? We are just learning who our Silver Stags are, so they're definitely rookies. Um, so that's a no. Does any soldier distrust the leadership or not fear them enough to obey orders on the battlefield? And that's also, I think, a no, because uh, even though Shimya is on this mission, it's the first time with the new Silver Stags. They don't know him yet. So I think everybody still trusts the Legion there. And our required specialists or equipment not on the mission. This is a scouting mission, so that would be sniper or scout, and you do have a sniper on board, so that is accurate. So we're currently at one die. On each scouting mission, also ask the following: Did the quartermaster spend horses to equip the mission? Quartermaster, I believe you did.
I did, yes.
So we are at 2 dice for this mission, and we don't care about load because this is a secondary mission. So Marshall, give me a 2 die secondary mission engagement roll, please.
Five high.
5 high. All right. So, and remind us what What that translates into.
So we can fail the mission or we can succeed, but two squad members die and all specialists take level 2 harm.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have our normal player of the officer here.
There are no penalties for failing this mission.
Worth noting.
Worth noting. So
Mhm.
that's your choice.
What you stand to gain is an asset, which translates into basically something that the quartermaster normally has to roll to acquire assets for, which is things like black shot, horses, food, things of that nature. And also one intel, of which you're going to get one from the primary and you're going to get one from the horned one because we've done two primaries. But you can really never have too much intel. So what do you guys think? Push forward and succeed or pull out?
We feel like the asset is worth the damage.
I will also say you may be getting 5 new soldiers, rookies. Sorry, let me be
I
very
mean, we have
specific.
like a fully dead squad, but that'll fill one squad back up. So,
Yeah.
but
I
yeah,
would be okay taking the loss, but it's up to everyone.
So what will we get out of it, material wise?
One
Anything?
asset and one intel if you choose to succeed.
Any asset, like
You
of any
know,
quality?
I've been a little whiffly waffly on this, but I think what you're going to get is probably I feel like it has to make sense in the context of the mission. So I feel like it wouldn't be horses, but I could see it being food and it's going to be black shot because I know what the intel is going to be if you choose to succeed. So you'll get a box of black shot, just 3 uses.
We currently can't hold another box of
Oh.
black shot.
Right.
Yeah,
fail it then. Yeah.
Let me look at quartermaster sheet because I feel like okay. I mean, would something else, and it looks like you're also full up on religious supplies.
I should invert how I do these boxes. One sec.
I've always like the way that makes sense in my head is a box means you have something and a dot means you have spent it. And I don't know why. I think that's just the way the interface is set up, that's usually true in most cases.
That feels, the inconsistency there bothers me greatly.
Okay.
So yeah,
However you
if the
wanna
box is full, we have it. Or if the circle's full, we have it,
Okay.
and we'll diminish the circles and empty the box.
Okay. So it looks like right now the thing you actually need the most of is horses. I mean, you could also use food stores, but um, what would you be looking for as a quartermaster?
Horses would be good.
Yeah, I mean, we do know that Plainsworth does have that additional bonus to getting horses or food. So actually, horses or food does make sense. Can make sense within the context of the mission.
We get, I know I wrote it down in my quartermaster log. Is it on if we roll a 6, we get the fire horses?
This is because this is a mission reward, you wouldn't actually roll for it. It would just be
Right.
it would just be a suite of horses, which is again 3 uses. But I'm willing to say it would be horses if that makes the conversation more interesting. There's no point in giving you guys although I mean you could also I think add a new box. Yeah, like you could. But if you're swimming in black shot, there's no reason to.
Right now we have 7 uses, so
Yeah.
that feels like we're pretty good.
Yeah. So let's say it's horses.
And we only have
now.
one. Yeah, we're down to our last dot of horses. So
Mhm.
So what do you think? A box of horses and 1 intel for 2 soldiers and all participating specialists take level 2 harm.
That sounds okay to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So that's the sniper and Shimya.
Yeah. So here's what I think happens. Uh, you get to Plainsworth. You already knew where the cart was because she was set up in the town square. But the intel, whatever she'd left there, wasn't there. The reports that you get from Plainsworth are heartbreaking. Render took the city, and Render is not one of the broken that likes to corrupt things. He smashes things and destroys things. He is war and destruction incarnate. Um, the scenes that are there are of overwhelming brutality. Uh, yeah, and I don't want to get too into details. You know, gore has not ever really been my strong suit, but it's bad. You knew it was going to be bad. Like this is not a fun happy story of things going well. It's not sunshine and rainbows. um but what the squad then sees is that they are going like Black Oak Knights, Jesus Christ. Black Oak Knights are going like from door to door, and they're clearly looking for something. They have hounds out there. So amidst all of this destruction, they're still looking for things in the rubble that they themselves created. There are caved in houses. There's some graffiti that says like fuck the war and stuff like that. Very different scene from when you guys left. But somebody notices in one of the books that are still left in the cart that almost seems like it was sort of hidden when you guys were looking for this thing that she must have left there. Um, a very a very simple message, something encoded, very spycrafty, like follow the white rabbit or something. And you start to notice that there's this little, in this case, it would be like a white rabbit symbol. In fact, why don't we just keep it at that because it's fun and recognizable. You see this little like white rabbit painted on like a side of a building, and you start following them through, and you find the dame Bella Bachler in a basement, little secret, you know, behind a bookcase, wine cellar kind of deal. Um, and what the returning troops, the stags, will tell you, officers, is that the Dane was going off. So first of all, she had like this whole like sheaf of papers on, you know, various movements of the undead. Um, but she says they're developing new weapons, that they've been doing research into Blackshot and corruption and the abilities that it can do not just on the dead but on the living as well. And she presents these two, they look like large arrowheads, but it's almost like they're designed for spears or ballista. And she says, if these cut you, they won't just kill you, but they'll actually begin to corrupt you as well. Um, and it is as she is going on this situation, it's then that, well, the people that were looking for her found her and the Legion with them. And it is a daring fight between Black Oak Knights and uh and the squad, trying to get Bella out. Um and in the process of that fighting, 2 of the rookies die. We don't have names for them yet, so let's pull up our namey generator over on the game resources tab. Because let's have Ben and Mark Each of you give me a name of a rookie and tell me how they died in the fighting. And feel free to make up narrative details, but um, I think the end goal result is the group finds a stable of horses and steals them. And that's how they wind up getting out of Plainsworth. But yeah, give me a rookie name and tell me how they died in the extraction.
And remind me which squad this is.
It's Silver Stags who do not have any names currently.
Yep.
So I will link the name generator I've been using. If you just want to go in and grab one.
The Barton rookie Aswina Sethwi died when one of those spears turns out they kill just as well as they corrupt if they hit you in the right place. And it shot right through her chest, leaving her heartless, but not in the way they might like.
Rest in peace, Aswina Sethwi. You will be remembered.
I think we had an Orite named Selik Leon. And I think they went down. They were overwhelmed. They got in the fight as a group was falling back. They just stumbled and were not able to be recovered before they were just set upon and swarmed. A bunch of a handful of knights.
Fantastic. And then Mark as well. Grey Stalking Root was on this mission and will be taking level 2 harm. How do you think that happened with everything we've set up so far?
Yeah, interesting. So it's primarily the Hounds and the Black Oak Knights here.
Yes. Although I will say that, we have seen the Black Oak Knights also ranged capable.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you up against Zemya's Sable Arrow because that would invite corruption unless she was not using her Sable Arrows. But if you want to, we can say that it was, a quote unquote sniper duel.
Actually, yeah, I think that. Let me take a look, double check. Not Silver Tide, the other one. Yeah, I'm actually marked and have corruption resistance. So
Oh, okay.
That might be a fun fictional thing to like have that come into play and like
Sure.
but then have that be kind of eaten away by the markings.
Awesome. Yeah, your protective tattoos or or just your panyar marks.
And that reveals that threat that is a thing that can happen now.
Yeah. So yeah, do you want to give us a quick little scene of like of your sniper versus this? She's an archer, but she's also the best, the best damn scout that the Black Oak Knights have. And I imagine she's a peerless sharpshooter with that bow and arrow as well.
Yeah. And so like Grey Stalking Root is generally one to hole up somewhere and overwatch. And I imagine that's what's happening when the combat breaks out. That's when he starts taking shots at Black Oak Knights.
See, it's hard. It's
and once he starts firing, that's when she gets the beat on him, and he gets, I think like he just, he's focused on the scope. He takes a shot, looks around to get a better view of what's going on so he can take the next one, and that's when he sees like just the glint of an arrowhead in his peripheral, and that's the only thing that keeps him from getting like skewered through the eye.
Take arrow wound, I guess, is a level 2 harm.
Yeah.
And even though your panyar mark like prevents the corruption, how do you know that these are still corrupting arrows? What does it feel like other than, ow, I just got arrowed?
Yeah, I think like since since it's a level 2 wound, I think it's like it grazed me, the corruption starts spreading, and then the marks kind of like it removes the corruption, like almost by like causing like a burning, like a sunburn or something from within to kind of like burn it out, and that's what's like actually causing a lot of the harm to myself. So like I can see the corruption spreading, and then it kind of crusts over and erupts a little bit, and it's kind of gross.
Awesome. Jazzy, you're the only one who hasn't like really contributed to the scene yet. Shimya also has to take level 2 harm. And so with everything that we've established so far, how do you think that goes down?
I think it's just sort of the frantic, like as we're getting to the horses and everybody's is getting on, he's like, shoving Bella on there and like smacking the horse so it's just like starts running. And I think like as we sort of see, the cool shot of one foot in the stirrup, one foot in the stirrup, like as he is like about to jump on, I think one of those Black Knight Oaks just like pulls him back like by the collar immediately just like smashes his head into the beam of the stable. There's just a very frantic wrestling going on until Shimya like manages to pull out a knife and like stab it between like one of the like one of the plates just for maneuverability, like maybe in the armpit, just stab frantically, get on the horse. And I think then like maybe a last like John Wick style, like the horse just bucks and we just hear the cracking of the skull. But I think, yeah, as that happens, just he probably also got stabbed. He got like smacked around a few times. Maybe something like bruised ribs or concussion, or head wound, would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could for me on Shimya's sheet, give him a level 2 harm. Uh, let's
So
just hmm?
he already has like one box marked with
Yep,
lacerations, but you could get another one, right?
correct. Yeah.
That would be okay. Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to check.
And it doesn't clear that box at all. So yeah. Yeah, give him level 2 harm. Uh yeah, let's just call it, I like cracked ribs. Let's go with that. Always fun, always a classic. All right. So and now we have to do XP for them. For participating in secondary mission, Greystalking Root and Shimya both get 2 XP. Shimya has that officer ability that says if soldiers died during the mission, he gets an additional XP. So Shimya actually gets 3 XP. Again, Shimya's player is not here. So we can
I'll
either
I'll put it in the special and then I'll just let him know maybe, or I'll make a note. I'll make a note
okay.
on the
On the little notes tab, 3 unspent
yeah.
XP or something. Fantastic. All right. And while you're doing stuff, Jazzy, Marshall, we go into the bookkeeping phase. So now we mark -1 morale for each legionnaire that died on the missions. We had 2 legionnaires die on the secondaries, so we go down by 2 morale.
That brings us to 8.
Okay. The mission that you didn't do had a penalty of 1 pressure. Commander, on your sheet, if you could add 1 pressure, and I will add 1 here on the campaign phase. That should take us to 1 pressure, I believe. Fantastic. Next, our other mission. Well, actually, no, you succeeded at the other 2 missions. That's the only penalty. So if gain mission rewards for successful missions. Let's start with Screaming Tower. You had 1 asset and 1 intel. We decided that asset was horses. Quartermaster, I don't know if you already added that horses, but if you did not, please go ahead and add 1 new box of horses.
I have, yep.
Fantastic. And then 1 intel. So Commander, add 1 intel. And then Operation Western Peak, similar situation. Again, the reward was 1 asset or troops and 1 intel. So Quartermaster and Marshal, you can fight it out. This can be any asset. So it can be any your choice of food, black shot, or horses. And I think those are the only things that really count as, quote, assets.
Did we get any supply?
No. Supply is normally gained from supply missions.
Got it.
Yeah, assets and supply are related but different things. So you can either get 1 asset of your choice or 5 rookies. Which would you prefer?
I think the rookies might be good to fill in our losses.
I agree. Yep.
Okay.
We currently have just a full squats. So we have 4 full squats available to us. And if you were to take 5 rookies, we would have an extra squat filled up. But I remember Kevin saying that it was very hard to get them. So we might want to take advantage of that now that we are getting rookies or are recruiting.
Quartermaster can always use recruit as a campaign action, but if you're going to spend campaign actions on like liberty and healing, then you start dipping into stuff like supply. So recruiting is, it's not that it's hard, it's just an opportunity cost for other things that you could be doing with the campaign actions that you get. I think there's like 1 location where you can't recruit, but it's very late game.
Yeah, then I would be happy with a new Grinning Raven squad.
Cool. I'm gonna make a note on myself on break because that's just time. I have to create those character sheets. So I'm just gonna leave a note to say on break, create 5 rookies. Because I don't know if you can do that with player interface.
Speaking of, I don't know on what sheet I need to fill in Voyas's sheet. I don't know if that's just a rookie soldier specialist.
Oh, he's a specialist. He's a heavy. He's there in the specialists tab.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
Yep, he's right underneath Gray Stalking Roots.
Okay.
Rookie. And I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do that on break, like I said I would. And then the other reward for Western Peak was also a 1 intel. So Commander, you have 2 intel, and actually you have 3 intel because the special ability of the Horned One says after you do 2 primary missions, you gain 1 intel.
Yeah.
Have I already told you about the Cinder Guard? Remember?
I don't recall.
Okay. I'm gonna assume I haven't. So interesting thing about Breaker. The Horned One comes back and she comes to the commander's tent. And she informs you in her weird way of speaking that there is a Cinder Guard that follows Breaker everywhere. Cinder Guard are like in Star Wars, the red troops. Same situation. They are the personal guard attaché of the Cinder King himself. Now what's interesting about this is one gets the sense, oh, I'm sorry. I must not. Let me see.
It's not like you can do it on break. It's
Yeah,
fine. I'm just like roll 20 is not not being honest here.
it's not your fault. I think I have to tell it to be like this is a thing that all players have control over. But I am bad at this game. I'll figure that out at break. Make a note of that as well. Uh, with player permissions. That's my bad. Um, yeah, so yeah, Breaker has this what normally would be a honor guard of sorts, but it doesn't feel like an honor guard. It feels like the kind of situation where it's more oversight
Hmm.
in the sense of this person is not guarding Breaker from outside threats. He's here to kill Breaker if she does something that the Cinder King disapproves of. Um, and I don't know how exactly the Horned One conveys that to you. Something about the way that he stands or does something. But she says that Breaker never goes anywhere without this Cinder Guard just following her with all of her movements. This is a little interesting when combined with what happened during Western Peak, because Silver, that giant flying monstrosity, is supposed to be her personal mount. And now I think it's starting to tell this story where Breaker is a little more restrained than some of the other Broken. The general assumption, I think, up till now has been that there's a sort of mind control thing that happens. And certainly, Broken are not nice people. They are definitely working for the Cinder King. But I think the assumption has always been there's sort of not brainwashing necessarily, but a sort of programming or conditioning to where they do these things out of, that sort of forced loyalty. Well, now it's looking like the force is a little bit more direct, and whatever happens to a chosen when they become broken doesn't necessarily fully involve like brainwashing to instill loyalty. They still have that sense of independence. And some of what you've seen is uh Breaker possibly pushing against her boundaries. If that all makes sense. Um so that's all interesting and exciting. Um, Fantastic. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know and I'll answer them to the best of the Horned One's abilities. But I think that's the juiciest tidbit there.
Yeah, not immediately.
Okay. Um, is that all of our XP mission rewards, mission penalties? I think it is. Am I forgetting anything? I don't think so. So I'm going to drag you all over to the campaign phase. And we transition out of the mission phase with a back at camp scene. And so we don't have a lore keeper, so I frame up a back at camp scene. It took place either shortly after the end of the missions or during the missions. Um, and I think I want to do a little sort of like slice of life scene. I want to learn a little bit more about our Marshal, because Marshal didn't get a lot of screen time last campaign phase. Um, let's learn a little bit about our Marshal, uh, Starosta Sylvan Rodano. Was the Starosta, were they hired as a officer Or did they do that sort of like progress through the ranks? They came into the Legion as a rookie, got promoted, got promoted, got promoted, and eventually earned a commission. Which one do you think?
I think it's a work my way through the ranks. Or I think that coupled with a few, um, being at the right place at the right time, or it's a war. Positions are opening up fairly quickly and frequently. So I think a few of that was just like, we don't really have anyone, so we promote you, or like that was a natural, like, okay, I'll do these duties then because someone has to. And then after a while, it was like, okay, now we're actually like acknowledging that you're doing all these things.
Interesting. So you're like sort of honorary or, de facto marshal for a while before it
Yeah.
became official. Um, the Legion lost 9/10 of its personnel at Ettenmark Fields. Were you the marshal there? Or were you field promoted? Is that when you assumed these duties officially? You're mentioning, positions opening up. That would be a lot of positions opening up there.
Yeah. But I think it's sadder if I was at or no, yeah, because I'm sure that other people were already in positions of power at that moment.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's say that that is when maybe I'd sort of already been doing it like unofficially for a little while, but that's I think when they were like, okay, the people like you, we need a little bit of a morale boost, so here is an official position. Go fix things now.
Yeah, and you probably needed to restructure the Legion entirely. The way that a military force fights when it's 1,000 heads versus when it's less than 50, like
Hmm.
you almost need to completely rework the squad structure. Um, and we know from the annals that this is not the first time the Legion has been reduced to like this few members. So there might already be like guides and protocols in the annals for how to like restructure the forces for the almost the exact situation you're in now. Um, all of that was to ask, like, if you are distant from the troops, because many militaries, you have your officers and you have your enlisted men, and like those two things you don't cross those streams. Um, but if when you're looking out at these, bright-eyed, clean-faced rookies, if you remember your old days and have any fondness for them, is kind of where I've been leading towards with this.
Hmm. Yeah, I think definitely like there might even be specialists that maybe like the ones who are already playing, or maybe ones that come into play later, that like might have known me when I was unofficially the marshal, or when I was maybe a specialist of another sort that got promoted. Um, I'm not sure if it's fondness. I feel like it is a feeling of like better days, in the sense that we were, an army and not a glorified guerrilla fighting squad. It was definitely a sense of when we were in a better position, when we had it all, when the world felt safer. But at the same time, I don't think she is a person, at least not to herself, to really glorify what it was like to be in the dirt and to have to listen to other people that at times you do not actually trust with your life. To be reassigned to squats where you didn't know anyone, and to just be expected that this person next to you was going to keep you safe, or that you were supposed to give up your life to keep them safe when you had literally never spoken until you went on a mission together. I think these are all things that she understands why they happen. She doesn't blame the former marshal or the current commander for any of it. Like, she understands that what's happens if you have such a big army, even now, that's just what happens.
Mhm.
Personal opinions can't be taken into account when when we are saving lives, not just our own, but those of others too. But I do think that she has an understanding of that and tries to mitigate as much as is possible. Or when she does these things, she at least for herself feels that it is a little less awful if she acknowledges that it is, a weird thing to ask a person. She won't make apologies, but she will have compassion for it because she does remember those days where, yeah, where you didn't have the power to make the
Yeah.
choices.
So I think here's the framing of the scene. I'll tell you guys the scene that I'm looking at is waiting nettle. A squad talks about home and asks their captain about theirs. But I think the way that I'm going to frame this is we're at Sunstrider camp. You're in these tents. It's been raining for 2, maybe 3 days straight. You've put down probably like wooden boards to get from like tent to tent, because everything else is just now puddles and mud. And not to mention it gets trod on by horses. And so anything that's not got these like temporary walkways between them is just a soup, a brown, ugly, wet soup. Um, Most of your boots and socks are soaked through. And I think normally soldiers, legionnaires would be gathered around campfires to take meals. But I think a squad, and I'm bouncing back and forth between the ghost owls and the star vipers. Um, I'll take a look at that as well. Thanks, Ben. Uh, let's see. Do we want to learn more about Kole or Kirish? Which one have we had more people played from?
I'm a big fan of Kirish personally. So.
Okay, yeah. Let's say the ghost owls have taken refuge in the marshal's tent. Um and Jazzy, you can play Starosta. Uh Ben or Mark, do either of you want to play Kirish? Somebody is going to ask quote unquote the captain, which we haven't talked about captains. They're not really a thing except for literally this one thing, but theoretically squads are led by a de facto captain. And I wonder if that's not a battlefield designation, but a non-battlefield designation, meaning like if the squad needs something, they send the captain to the quartermaster's tent to get it.
Mhm.
Instead of like if Jeremy or Nuri need extra food rations or whatever, they will send the captain to go and get it, but the captain isn't necessarily the person who is calling the shots on missions, if that makes sense. They're the more of a liaison than anything.
Kind of
um
like a K-pop leader.
yeah, the face, right?
The face, yeah.
um Even though what's funny is Kirish is just a kid, so I
But
but
maybe that's why, because they're like hoping maybe that he's gonna get like more done, because
well
they might get like more done, but asking
well
because they're like, oh, nobody thinks you're taking advantage.
Well, Zaya or Farian, actually, Kirish isn't just a kid anymore, right? Did Kirish promote? I thought they did.
They might.
No, you guys are taking all of every other XP for them. Okay, I see what's going on. You want to keep that just a kid going as long as possible. All right. Man. So I wonder if Kirish is the captain, or would it be, it would have been Farian or Zaya, but they got transferred to another squad. So who is the new captain of the Ghost Owls? Would it be Kirish or
Maybe,
Crimson?
yeah.
Crimson and Jeremy have like squad seniority as well. Sorry, Mark, I talked over you. What would you saying?
Oh yeah, I was just nodding.
Um, I don't know, Mark, Ben, Jazzy, what do you think? Who would be the quote unquote squad captain? Would it be Kirish or would it be, I could see Crimson or Jeremy.
I think
Um,
Crimson was originally I think she got moved. I don't know if she was originally a ghost owl.
her icon is Ghost Owl.
Oh, okay. And maybe
And
I moved. Oh, yeah, I moved Valentina, I believe. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I'm too lazy to change people's icons when they move squads like
So,
that.
so valid. Um,
Uh
I could see you being curious because I also kind of feel like it is a role that people don't necessarily want.
Yeah.
Because then, like, you're sent out to basically do other people's complaining. You're kind of having that middle manager shit thrown at you where, like, your squad will complain to you, and then you have to go beg the quartermaster or whoever for, like, can we please have this thing? And then if they say no, then you have to go deliver the news to your squad, and then they'll be, like, I feel like this is like they want you to feel like it's honorable, but it's not. So I could honestly kind of see Kirish being like almost duped into it,
Oh, yeah.
where they were like, "Yeah, this is totally like a good position. You go do the complaining for us."
yeah. So the prompt here is a squad talks about home and asks their captain about theirs. And I think knowing that that's the prompt, we could just kind of go into it. So Jazzy, yeah, I think you have the ghost owls are taking shelter and just like eating, soup out of helmets in your tent. But Mark and Ben, feel free to pick up whoever you want from the ghost owls. And I might also poke in as one of the other rookies from that squad just if we need another voice in the room. But um yeah. Who are you all wanting to play?
I feel like if we're giving Kirish a bit of a spotlight here, I'd like Mark. I'd like to offer that to you.
I accept. Yep.
Cool. So, yeah. Ben, do you have somebody there that you want to play? Or if you want to play somebody else, we can finagle. Uh,
I
if you want to play,
can take.
or if you want to bring in a specialist, if you want to bring in like, I don't know what Adjamir would be doing here, but we could say that he's there eating food as well.
I think getting a rookies scene would be
Yeah.
fun. We've not had a lot of rookie only scenes. I'll take
Yeah.
Nuri.
Okay. Um, yeah, and I might just reach in and grab whoever. Um, like, yeah, I think the way that we get into this is uh Crimson Reaching Flower kind of chuckles at the soup and says, this is how you know the quartermaster is Barton. This has that sort of that Barton spice to it. Uh I think what I really miss from home is Gaza berries. Um, we used to squeeze them out and put them in soups like this, and it adds just a whole new dimension to the cooking.
Nuri will kind of look up from under their brows and say, "What I miss from home is people not complaining about the Barton spices."
I'm trying to remember where Kirish is from. We had
Kirish is Barton.
Yeah, he's Barton. Did we say
Oh wait, no, but wasn't Kirish raised
Yeah, in
in Aldermark?
yeah.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
look at
sorry.
us! Look at us with character continuity.
I think Kirish has kind of like he's kind of like a second generation removed from that like food and culture, and there's kind of like a not far away, but kind of like a thoughtful look of like I would kind of like, this is this Barton, these Spartan spices are like, he wants to say they remind me of home, but doesn't feel like he can really claim that. Yeah.
How close do you think Nuri and Kirish are? Is just checking. They would be the only ethnically Barton in
Yeah.
the squad, so
Probably relatively friendly. Yeah.
Nuri was transferred recently, but you're both survivors of Ettenmark Fields, and that should give, I think, a certain sense of camaraderie.
Yeah, I'm sure we've both lost a lot of people as well, so we probably have had some discussions about that.
yeah. Nuri is mourning Simon Fairley, apparently.
Simon died in the opening mission, was killed by hounds.
Right. Seeing a bit of that hesitance in Kirish, I think Nuri will say, "What food do you miss from home?"
It's not the kind of food, but the availability. Uh, we we got to sample all kinds of different things, and it seemed like there would be no end. It just wasn't really something we thought of. It was just like breathing air. Now I miss it being easy. It feels like we're choking sometimes, but we take what we get, and every breath is a gift.
Well, this got to be a bit of a downer. Well done, Kirish.
I think the marshal will smile and says, well, on a happier note, that is why we fight. So not everybody has to think like that.
Maybe someday we'll be able to breathe again.
Well, if you can't breathe, you can't talk. And you seem to be doing plenty of that, so.
And if you can't talk, you can't complain.
And if you can't complain, the hounds can't find you. Because they track breath, remember?
True, that's true.
Though I think after a few more of these quartermaster meals, I'd probably be tracked by hounds all the way from Carlsberg.
Your stomach isn't tough enough yet. Eat more.
And Crimson just like lets out this sort of like garlicky belch.
It smells like home.
That actually is a good little ending note, unless somebody else wants anything else out of that scene or to keep going and learning more about people's homes.
That's good for me.
Sure.
Yeah. Good button.
Fun little back at camp, little vignette of the rookies, get to see some of their lives. All right. We move into the campaign phase proper. Time passes. Time and pressure on the commander rulebook increase by 1 each. I will increase it here on our map commander if you want to increase it there on your sheets. And I said I was going to do this and I didn't. Marshall, since you got to be on screen there for a little bit, how has the Marshal's costume or appearance changed now that fall has begun and the weather's getting colder?
Interesting. Um, I think we are seeing um like those like fingerless gloves being added to the costume or like the uniform that she's wearing. Um, and I think, yeah, incorporating, I mean, she doesn't like travel with too many clothes, given that that's a load and expense that we can't necessarily afford. But I do think that she takes care in how she presents. And I think there is a little bit of almost luxury in being able to um change with the seasons. Not just in like pure practicality, but also in look. And I think projecting like that when we go talk to other people, that there is like a little bit of civility left in that sense in us, that we aren't like scrambling for just moth-eaten cloaks and whatnot. I think yeah, she'll have like a beautiful like fall colored scarf that's like added over the coat and those gloves. And I think everywhere like where she is, you can sort of spot amongst the trees just like this beautiful like golden fall leaf colors. And demeanor, I don't think her demeanor gets changed by the seasons anymore. Um, Maybe winter a little, because winter's hard, but fall is still okay. It might get wetter, it might get colder, but these are all still things that we can weather. It's the extreme seasons, summer and winter, that she doesn't like too much for its practical reasons.
Fantastic. Quartermaster, you can spend one food, or the Legion loses 2 morale.
Done.
All right. Again, seasons change. How has the quartermaster's appearance or costume changed? And also, fall normally like is a big shift in cuisine. I don't remember if we've gotten into this, but how does the Legion feed its soldiers? Is it a sort of like distribution of raw goods that they all go out to like their separate campfires and cook separately? Or is it more like a canteen where there's a central area and a kitchen that cooks for everyone? Or something else?
I think it might vary based on where we're camped. Some places might not be, it might not be wise to set down for with the kind of not just wise, it might not be easy to set up something that would require the kind of infrastructure to manage a larger kitchen like that. But here in Sunstrider camp, um, yeah, there's a kitchen, a camp kitchen where people can come pick up food if they want to use the supplies here to cook something with what their rations allow. That's fine too. Grandpa doesn't care. But I think his appearance with the cooling weather hasn't changed too much if you're not paying attention to the fact that his robes are a little thicker now, a little more um, I guess temperature aware than before, not quite as flowy, a little heavier. But if you're not paying attention, if you just see him walking by, he looks pretty much the same, all bright colors, lots of adornments, always a reserved but present smile.
Um, since we just did talk about Barton cooking, you're obviously not in Barta. What is like an ingredient or item of normal Barton cuisine that you just have not been able to source here in Aldermark, and that makes you miss home? Or dish. It could be something like tea, I guess, or a specific kind of.
There is a bread that is quite common in Barta, but it's not often served on its own. It's kind of a accompanying meal. You dip your food with it. You use it as a bit of a spoon itself. And while they can make flatbread and bannock and hardtack and all that with what they have, the spices are never quite right. It's never quite as soft as pliant, and the meals just don't feel complete without it to him, and I imagine to many Bardens.
Interesting. Thank you. We do not have a lore keeper to tell us tales of the Legion. So we move into campaign actions. Quartermaster, we look at you. We have 8 morale, so that means you get 2 actions for free. And you can either boost them with supply or take more campaign actions with supply if you would prefer.
Yeah, so it sounds like rest and recuperation might be really handy here. So I think that's a given. But for that second action, I kind of feel like we got to take a chance to get those fire mains, which would mean not ticking down stress. Are we in a good enough place to let our stress ride?
Let's see. Kirish has 5 stress, Crimson 3.
Rookies are,
Silver has 5.
you can always just choose to not play rookies. Rookies are a little easier to work around with stress.
Yeah. I only see stress-wise seems like only silver from our specialists.
I'm seeing 1 on Adramir, but that's 1. But yeah, silver's pretty stressed.
But I mean, if we just hope that next mission we don't need silver, she can
Mm-hmm.
rest after.
Or alternatively, silver goes on the secondary because there's no stress
Yeah.
on secondaries. So
That's true. Mark, as Silver's main handler, how are you feeling about that?
no, Jazzy is silver's.
Yeah.
Sorry,
That
silver and gray.
and gray, yeah. We
Sorry.
made things difficult for no reason.
One of you is shiny, but you're the same color.
Yeah.
Usually
And
it's
now we
red and
also have
crimson.
like silver as like the monster thingy.
Right.
So it was very funny for you earlier the session to be like, and silver is this big monster. Like, whoa. Whoa.
Okay. A little insensitive, but all right.
A little rude, but okay.
Then
No,
Jazzy.
that works for me. Yeah, that's all right.
Because I could do it too, but then we would be completely
we
out of
need
supply.
horsies. We need horsies. We need fancy
All right.
horsies.
Then
All right, so let's talk about the rest and recuperation. So that's healing, yeah?
that is healing. Everyone can tick one of those healing boxes.
Alrighty.
And
Which should clear Shimya.
yep, and it should the mercy also gets cleared too.
Yes.
So she's available again.
Well, yeah, will be. Next go round. So who is it? Adramir has level 1 and level 2 harm. So is he clearing level 1 or getting one of the 2 boxes on level 2 harm taken care of?
He can ignore level 1 harm penalties, so we'll work on the level 2.
Cool. I will go ahead and put that on his thing there. Who else? Gray Stalking Root. All right, Mark, you took care of that. And then our rookies. Did any of them take harm? It was the ghost owls that went out last time.
Yeah, I think some of our soldiers might still be hurt. Yeah, I see Therian is
yeah.
still hurt.
Zaya's fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is all level 1 and level 2, but it looks like Zaya can clear that level 2 track or the
And
level 1 track.
Varian can also let's have the level 2 cleared because I think yeah, because he needs to take level 2 to get extra stuff, so he'll clear that. Now what do we want to clear for Zaya? Do we want to clear that level 2 or level 1?
She also ignores level 1, so
Okay, level 2. There we go.
Fantastic. All right. Is that everyone? I'm just gonna say yes, it is. All right. Now Spymaster.
I'm gonna acquire some assets first.
Yeah.
Horses.
Yeah, that's yeah, sorry. Spymaster did say that that she would send Leah either out to assist the quartermaster via blackmail if you want to do that, or can help long-term projects. It looks like the Spymaster is giving you Leah for this campaign phase, quartermaster, to use as you like. She can go she can blackmail, which adds 1 die to acquire assets rolls. She can help, which adds 1 die to long-term project rolls, but it sounds like you're going to let laborers take care of that, not do that. Or if you don't need her, she can go and work on a long-term project to research for Talgon Forest. Do you want her help in acquiring assets? Is, I guess, where I'm going with that.
Right. Her help would mean an extra d6.
Yes. And let me pull up Sunstrider Camp, because you have an asset rating of 1, acquiring horses at +2 die, so you're at 3 die right now to acquire horses. You can boost that with supply if you don't like the result, but you have 1 supply, and you cannot take supply missions in this location.
Right. I think they're working on research.
Leah normally works on, if she's not assigned to something else, that is sort of like her fallback from what Nika's been doing so far. And
that only works if that'll only work in this location, if I'm reading that correctly.
In Talgon Forest is okay. What is kind of what we've been working towards.
Got it. I feel pretty okay with 3 dice, and then if we need to, we can spend that supply.
Okay. Fantastic. Give me a 3 die acquire. Well, this is for horses, yes?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Give me a 3 die acquire assets roll. Let's see what happens.
Got a 6.
So that is a 6. Did I say that was enough for fire mains?
If results are above standard, you get fire mains. Is what I wrote down in the log.
Okay. Then yeah. So yeah, normally this would be yeah, fine horses. So I will say these are fire mains, which means every use of them reduces pressure by 2 instead of 1. Give us a scene. Like how do you convince horse people to give up fire mains?
You see, Wahib is just, he's really sweet. And so you don't even realize that he is a ruthless businessman until he leaves you with a little sweetie, a little sachet of tea, sachet, little package of tea. And you feel really good until you realize that, wow, that was a really bad deal for me. But until that hits, everybody's smiling. And so he's having a good time. He's charming. He's making everyone feel like they're just having a great afternoon with everybody's grandpa. And by the time the deal is signed and he's walking off with those fire main bridles in his hands, that's when you start to see the smiles faltering and the confusion hit. And then whoever he bargained with will probably curse something in Atramani.
You know, horse people are interesting because like they feel like a subculture within Aldermark.
Aldemar.
Yeah, I use Aldermani for whatever that term is that means like the adjective for a group of people. Nomenclature is not the word I'm looking for, but it's something like that. But does anybody like have a reaction to these legendary horses like coming under Legion control? Is any Legionnaire a horse girly secretly or not secretly? This is an open question to everyone.
I think Silver is not a horse girly, she's just an animal girly. So like any animal, I think she's like probably frequently seen you know, feeding some of the like some squirrels or just like distracted looking up at the birds. Not anymore probably, but before the birds were evil. Yeah, I think like she's just is known for like liking animals. So when these horses are in camp, I think immediately she will be there at the stables. I mean, they were better days. Now the birds are evil. This is the reality that we live in. You did this. You made the birds evil. Yeah, I think Silver is a horse girly, and I think what was his name? I think Earl Alistair Tatton. He'll only go and be cute with the horses when he thinks nobody's looking, but he'll be very edgy about it if anybody asks. He doesn't care, whatever, they're horses. But then if nobody's looking, he's doing that, you know, like little forehead bump with the horses.
I think Comtesse Olivia is normally stoic, and I think tries to keep it together for the sake of keeping everyone together. But I think when there's definitely a shift when she sees, you know, that we have those horses now, and like maybe the first time that has really slipped in front of people she wasn't like close to structure wise, and just kind of like maybe even speechless for the first time in a while, just kind of, oh, okay, that is useful. Wow.
Has the Comtessa ever ridden a Firemane before? Or I guess has anybody in the Legion ever ridden a Firemane before?
I would guess not.
That's fun and exciting.
Well, he was actually terrified of horses, but he's just a good salesman.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think Sylvan is like when it happens, I think she's more like, well, he did it again, rather than, ooh, the horses. I think there was like this, of course he's gonna get us the fancy horses. And I think there's sort of this knowing smile, both at the sales technique and maybe knowing that you don't like them, but that you now like have to present yourself as someone who did the thing and is like sort of presenting these horses in a subtle way. I think she herself is like, Yeah, that's nice. They're cool horses. That's good for us, but I don't think she particularly cares.
Amazing. Incredible. I love all those. Um, all right. Is that your two actions, Quartermaster? Is there anything else you want to do or take care of?
The only thing that remains to be taken care of is I can't update that clock.
Oh, I have it updated on the VTT interface.
Oh, cool. Maybe
Yeah,
if I
I also poked my head in there and was like, yeah, this is not being cooperative, and I don't know why or how to fix it. Mer. Mm. Bleh. Yeah, we might want to do you see where I have it on the VTT there in the bottom left?
Yep.
Cool. I will see if I can give you permissions for that. I should be able to.
I'm
Uh,
also tracking it in our Discord, so
oh, okay.
it's not the worst.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, we might just ignore the sheet interface then if it's going to be about that. Um, unless you really want it, then I'll dig into it and I'll see if I can figure something out.
I'm not worried. We
Okay.
can sort it in the future.
Alrighty. Anything else from the quartermaster?
No, I don't believe so.
What does so your laborers make a little bit of progress on the mobile farm, and I don't want it to just like be a clock. So like uh do they make a breakthrough? It's slow progress going, but like what has changed from when we last saw these mobile farms? Or is it literally just they've got seeds in the ground and we're now just waiting? But I like to think for some reason in my head mobile farming is something that we don't even do in our world. I feel like there should be something like not magical, but like there should be research R&D. There should be research and development going on. And it's like, yeah, just satisfy my curiosity there. Really.
What god chose the Horned One? What is?
The Horned One.
Oh, that.
Her full like she is sometimes called the chosen of the Horned One, and she is sometimes just called the Horned One. The
Got it.
relationship between gods and their chosen is something that's a bit of debate, even the fact that you can talk to chosen, because the gods do not have direct interface with this world. They're normally very distant, as in they do not manifest, they do not answer prayers. And some gods, like the living god of the Zemyati, actually only the living god of the Zemyati, um, can choose multiple people. So there might not even be like strict rules, but there are some people who think that the god literally goes down and inhabits a mortal for a while. There are some who believe that they imbue the mortal with some of their essence. Um, so it's not certain, but the way that the Horned One is kind of referred to suggests both to me as a player and I think people in the world is that the two Panyar gods, Nyx and the Horned One, are more of the direct interface and like take over the body of the person who they choose. But if that's exactly true, I'm gonna leave that fuzzy for now. That was a long answer.
uh, so I just glanced at her abilities, and one of her abilities is anointed. And I think that's the key here. She has anointed this uh, this mobile farm, and the connection between nature and this god gives it a bit of a just a little bit of a boost. It's soil steroids.
Does she like do the wrist dripping like bleed into it, or does she just like come over and sprinkle some water on it in a Hail Mary kind of thing?
Yeah, let's go with some god blood.
No, she uses the wrist like a good like a like a
Okay, she's sensible. Good. Good. I was about to abandon this whole damn campaign if she's like an idiot.
I did read something from a fantasy novel that was like strictly specified it had to be palm blood, and I thought that was the funniest fucking thing. But in any case, um,
Specifically, it has to be
What?
the webbing between the thumb and the finger so that it's
oh
the most annoying.
no,
It
no,
has
that's
to
the
be a
worst.
paper cut.
What?
Yep.
What even is palm blood? No,
Palm
that's not how
blood.
blood works. Blood isn't different in your hand than it is in your wrist. That's even dumber. I'm
It's about
mad.
the
Magic, you
ritual.
know?
It's the ritual
Yeah, yeah.
and how
Like,
inconvenient it is.
Right. No. I mean, has that been checked? Is that science that we
but no, no. For the sake of Jazzy's sanity, she can pull it from, her wrist. Sure. Um, cool. Let's call it a, 5-ish minute break. Grab some coffee, stretch the legs, and then we'll come back, finish up campaign phase. Sound good? All right. All right, making a note for myself. Need to make sure that we get Voyas's sheet visible, and I get 5 new rookies also visible to the player. I have a feeling if I solve one problem, I'll solve the other one. But that's a problem for future Cinder King. For now. Let's see. Quartermaster got their campaign actions done, so now we go to the Spy Master. Nika's player's not here. Um, we miss you, Ben. And but you left us some notes, so it looks like Ben wants Boris to continue expanding the network. Um, Anyatin definitely doesn't go flirting, but will pursue augmenting mission that assignment. And Leah, since the quartermaster doesn't need her, will go off to look more into Talgon Forest. I see 3 players here. So if each of you could open up Nika's sheet, we'll go sort of in order of appearance. So, all of you actually pick one. Pick your favorites. Whoever picks first. Um, I think they all require rolls. Bordis, um, yeah, Bordis is working on expanding the network, and he just generates +1 segment, so it's not an additional die. Uh, Leah gets 1 die on research assignments, but I think that needs to be like hard rolled because I don't think the game factors bonuses into that. And same with Anya 10 for his specific thing. So everyone pick one.
Pick Anyatin.
Cool. What might actually help is if you click over on master, if you click that trained box over to master before you hit roll, it should roll 2 dice instead. If I'm not mistaken. Because I think master spies roll 2 die, trained roll 1. Go ahead and give that a shot.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And on a 6, that is 3 ticks. And that was Oniton for augment mission. So, boop. That's done. I've added those segments. Jazzy and Ben, do you guys have a preference?
I'll take Bordis.
Go for it.
I'll roll for Leah.
And same thing, Jazzy. If you're using the roll interface, that sheet, if you click Leah over to master instead of trained before rolling, it'll roll 2 dice for you. I'll just
No
take it
change
back.
needed for Bordis.
No change needed for Bordis. He just automatically generates. Are you kidding? Oh my God. You guys are not getting the true Band of Blades experience. I need you all to understand this. So this is 6 for Leah. So that's 3 segments on was it re no wait. Yeah, she gets 3 ticks for research. So that clock is now half filled. And Bordis got a 5, but because he generates an extra segment, what would normally be 2 ticks is 3 ticks on the expand network clock. So, all right, cool. I've added all of those. Spy Master clocks are now up to date. Does anybody want to do any vignettes for their chosen spy? Well, we can move on.
I'd be okay with moving on without Ben
Sure.
here
Yeah.
to guide that.
Awesome. Just wanted to leave that door there. All right. Laborers work on long-term projects. Spy masters deployed their spies. Alchemists, we don't have any. We look to our commander. Commander, how has your look changed with the onset of fall? Have you made any changes to your costume?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's just the beginning of fall, so it's a little bit subtle. But I think there's an opportunity to bring out some. I think Livia actually looked forward to the fall and the colder weather. I think she like secretly, or maybe not secretly, kind of like enjoys the fashion side of things. I think that's from the proud or right reputation. It probably has like a small trunk of like extra things brought along. And so maybe it's not all at once. It is a subtle change, but like over the days and weeks, might be noticing slightly more fall cut fashion.
Incredible. Love it.
We'll
And
never admit
yes, in my head, Livia is a secret PSL, pumpkin spice latte girly. Um, love it. But Commander, will Legion be advancing to the next location, or you sticking around for a little longer? I will remind you, a roll was made and an offer was made, and I don't know if I should have made it, but you know, whatever. Strauss isn't here to tell me no. Um, that if you stick around here, I will give you a special mission
Right.
related to the bandits. You don't have to take it. You can go to the next location. You can head into the forest if you want, or I guess down the West Lake, but you're researching Talgon Forest.
Yeah, we haven't stuck around once. Yes, let's see what happens if we stick around.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
feel like
Um,
plenty of time.
this seems like as good a time as any, to illustrate the increase of pressure from that mission you didn't take.
Mm.
So I think there's a night, where the big central command tent where Horse Lady Tsaga is, has all of her papers and everything. They've come back from this mission. Everybody's come back from their missions. Actually, Western Peak may still be out a little bit. You guys were out for, like a week. Um, but there's a night where there is just full on people playing zithers. They've lit the torches extra bright. They're passing around this kefir fermented milk. And there's all kinds of drinking and merriment. It is Sunstrider's version of, liberty, right? Um but you guys aren't participating because you didn't go on the mission to go out riding with the horse lady. And in fact, she makes a point to the commander, um where she's like, it's a shame, all these years I've been hearing about the Legion's glory, and then it turns out you make it to our tents and hospitality, and you hide in your tents like cowards. I have to admit, I'm a little let down.
Cowards.
Of course, we offered to let you take our horses out and ride with us in glorious combat, and it was glorious. It was the stuff of legends. And sure enough, they've already been normally, in these events, people sing songs about great deeds and stuff, and you're actually listening to one being made. There's like these bards in a a corner, and they're testing out lines for a new song. They've got hurdy-gurdies and zithers, and they're trying out these lines, but from the content of what they are trying to put into verse, you've gathered that they rode out into the forest west here of Sunstrider Camp, which I think is called like the Blackwood or something like that, something very, dark fantasy. Um, and it was just thunder and lightning all the way. It was like the gods themselves were, fighting against them. And they went and they found these copses of these trees that Breaker uses to create her undead. And they went and they fought, and there was all kinds of resistance, and they might be trumping up a little bit of the contributions, but they went and they slaughtered all of these undead, and no one could stand up against them or their fire mains. Um, and it's this very like machismo battle song that they're composing, and she's like, and the Legion could have been part of it.
And that mission failed, didn't it?
It failed, but the horse riders, the part was that the Legion was going to join the horse people on this raid. um for our intents and purposes of game terminology, the mission failed.
Right.
What we're learning in real time is that it did in fact fail, because as this song is and as this party is going on, at some point the screaming starts. There's an undead attack that gets launched on the camp, on Sunstrider Camp. Now there's the tents that you guys all have, the horse people, but there's also the refugee tents that have been coming in from Plainsworth that were set up to the west side of camp. Um, and that's where the screaming is coming from. And we don't have to get into like, the combat. This is not a fight scene. It's not hard to put down this attack, but this type of undead that we haven't actually seen on screen yet, called the Burned. If you've ever played Mass Effect, you know what a husk is. They're these sort of like shambling undead, but when they get close to you, they sort of like vent out this giant explosion of like lightning. That's what these undead do, is they come out of the forest and they sort of shamble into the tents, and then they just kind of like, sometimes they just fall over, but then like static electric, not static, but just like lightning just sort of like bursts out of their body, and there's flames spreading across the refugee camp. And so really it's not necessarily a repulsion of the attack itself. Hello, we have a, speaking of undead incursion, Sirius is taking this undead attack very seriously. um he's like, oh no. So the attack itself is easy enough to repel, but the rain happened to stop, and now there's a bunch of tents, refugee tents, on fire. So pick a legionnaire, everyone. Mark, you might want to just stick with a commander, but like, how does the Legion help either deal with the attack itself or put out the fires?
I think Livia takes the opportunity to show demonstrate the discipline of the Legion by like, as soon as the attack starts, it's like calling for like, the squad, go there, take care of it, and then once the undead are gone, um, forming the bucket line or whatever needs to happen to put out the fire, and just kind of taking care of it. It's a surprise and it's unwelcome, but it is it's part of the job, and it's kind of, she takes care of it kind of matter of factly.
And I think we see Adramir not helping specifically with putting out the fires, but once the attack is over, he'll be treating the people who got burned or hurt.
And I think we see, let me pick a random person here. I think we see the rookie Valentina Yelkinevia, who were like almost shot the bandits at the bridge. I think, yeah, we see her like one of those tents is kind of like caving in. Somebody like ash on their face, just in full shock. Maybe like a relatively young girl. She's just like screaming and crying, barely audible. She's screaming that her little sister is still inside. And I think we see Valentina kind of have this like looks around for just a second, sees that help isn't coming, and know that she is the most capable person here. So gathering her courage, we see her. I assume that, we have shields or something where she like picks up. I think she actually like cracks um one of those boardwalks like completely soaked through, and just like that amount of like moisture, even as the tent is coming down, she's using it as a shield, reaches out through the smoke to this young girl who's just crying for her mom, who's already outside but lost in the panic, and she'll scoop her up and just like kind of slide outside, just like jump outside as the tent completely collapses in flame.
Fantastic. And I think, camera kind of crossfades to next morning, dawn. Most of you, the Legion, hasn't gotten a whole lot of sleep, if any. A field hospital tent has been set up so Adramir can help out with their healers, and the Mercy uh is probably trained in the medical arts even when they're not using their divine power, and is probably there helping you. um we haven't talked about Seneharaja. um Quartermaster, you started this game with a Mercy, um but somewhere in the book it said that like mercies and alchemists are not actually like signed on with the Legion. They're not oath sworn. So do we know why Seneharaja joined the Legion, or is with the Legion? Is it purely mercenary? Are you just paying her to tag along, or is there a deeper reason or a different one?
When this particular branch of the Legion got started, I don't think Wahib was the quartermaster originally. And the Mercy was the previous quartermaster's daughter. Does that make... Yeah, let's go with that. And so she has stayed. She has found a role for herself, not as a medic necessarily, but as someone who is able to and willing to put her body on the line to help, because she knows how important the Legion is and that they need her.
Awesome. um yeah. Commander, what's the next morning like after this big undead raid? Do you throw this back in Saga's face at all, or
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
what's that look
Um,
like? Like, do you just burst into the tent, command tent?
I think it's more like seeing her around camp, probably a little bit less cocky than last night. And it's more like digs, like glory doesn't, glory is for the warrior. Glory does not serve those they fight for. Glory didn't save anyone last night, and it certainly didn't prevent it from happening. Only slow, hard work does that. It's not flashy, but it's the reason we're still here.
She squints her eyes back at you and says, if we had more soldiers, perhaps. But I can't keep the hills safe from bandits and fight the undead at the same time.
Neither can we. And that's why we are moving east.
You're leaving.
Eventually.
I see. Wow. We'll stay here and continue fighting, and we'll achieve as much glory as we can. And if that means we die doing it, then at least the world will know we died fighting. We died on our feet or in our saddles, which is how warriors die.
Hopefully we will not have to learn that by fighting your reanimated corpses later on.
In the absence of a witty retort, she just turns her horse and trots it off. Mechanically, the next thing that we have to do is, Commander, you should choose a mission type to focus on. And I think in fiction, this is like, you're just kind of like focusing on, well, what the Legion needs right now. Sunstrider Camp, unfortunately, only has recon and assault missions. Um,
We have a special one coming up as well, right?
You do, yes. One of the missions will be a special mission. And if I roll a special, I'm just going to re-roll it. I'm not giving you two special missions in a single way. Well, maybe. I don't know. If that comes up, it comes up.
I kind of feel like recon would be useful again.
Like I said, you can never have too much intel.
Yeah.
You never have too much intel. You don't even have all 4 of your questions unlocked yet.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Recon for you, yeah, I might also go with recon for GM's choice. Or I've always wondered, the game just says GM's choice. It doesn't say it has to be restricted to the 2 types that are available. I might ask around and see if I can expand out. Be like, look, it's GM's choice. You get the rare supply mission. You know.
Mm.
But I'll jump that hurdle because that's strictly a GM thing. Cool. I will note it. Let me write that down. GM choice, GM focus, or sorry, commander focus. Recon. Cool. What's next? Mission generation. So that's it, because it's gonna take me some time to generate missions. So we can call it, well, I was gonna say we can call it a session, but there are some free play scenes that I might be interested in. I don't know if you guys have any interest in any free play scenes. We haven't seen anything from Dominik Trenker or Emerald Watching Wave for a while. I don't think they would have stayed in Plainsworth or in that camp. They know the undead are coming. They're not stupid. They probably came east. I don't know if they're at camp with you guys, but they certainly can be. if that's something we want to follow up on. Um, Anybody have any ideas or any scenes they would like to see?
This brings to mind.
Okay. Hmm. Also, the Dame. I'm gonna say the Dame is joining camp with the Legion. At least for now, she doesn't have. Yeah, let's zoom in on that really quickly. Um, the Stags came back, two of them dead. Severely, two of the specialists severely wounded, but they came back with the Dame. Um, she was able to, because she survived, turn that intel over, but she's been a bit reclusive. She takes meals if offered, but she doesn't really, she's not outgoing. Um, so there's that. Yeah. And then the Whispers are still in camp. Um, Maybe we do a scene with Adar. Um, yeah. But I don't know who the Dar would go and talk to. Maybe the specialists. Um, I think Spikes, um, the littlest Dar, I I think she wants to join in one of the Legion's like training. Um, the Dar, they're a military, they were a mercenary unit as well. They had their own methods and stuff, but I think one morning, Marshall, do you lead field exercises? Do you do like a field training in the morning? Or is it kind of on troops to keep their own bodies and minds fresh? Individual drills.
No, I think it's a group activity. I think as I mentioned earlier, she knows what it's like to be in a squad with people you don't know that well and be like, hey, entrust your life to these people. And it's not much, but if at least you can sort of put a name to a face, because you have sort of been in like a very low stake situation, been suffering in that sense of like, this is our 10th lap and we're starting to feel it. That will create a certain kind of camaraderie. But in a way where there can't really, not much can go wrong. Like not much is at stake except winning, maybe a moment of bonding, right? So I think she tries to, like, this is a, we get everybody together, and I think she finds it important that she is there too, so that they can never accuse her of not, you know, she doesn't ask people what she's not willing to do. She's there at the training just as they are, and if she can do it, then they have to shut up and do it because someone can. So why can't they?
Yeah, and I mean, it could be like sparring with wooden weapons or, something not like Tai Chi kind of like block formation drills, might also be something that we see.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you notice that Spikes is in the back. Like if it's partner drills, like it's that scene from Last Samurai where Tom Cruise's character like gets a wooden sword and is like doing the back to back or the 1v1 training with like one of the Legionnaires. Um, and is just going through like sword forms with them. Do you let her continue to participate? She's not Oathsworn.
I think I do. I think I'm sort of, like walking to the troops, little corrections, little encouragements, sort of equally dished out. get that angle right on that sword. You're leaving your left open. Good on the good on the parry, stuff like that. And then I think when I come to them, I think like stand there and observe them for a moment. Not in like a stop what you're doing kind of way, but in like a this is a curious sight, and I'm like sort of opening it up to them almost to say something.
Um, who would be fun for her to be sparring with in case we need somebody else in the scene? You have some soldiers here. Uh, she might be sparring with Farian. Um, Count Farian. You see them off to the side. And she's clumsy, but not because she's not a well-trained soldier. It's not a weapon that she's used to using. Um, and so she's just not used to the weight of it. And so Farian continues to like get inside of her guard and, get the sword up to her shoulder, her neck, and clap her on it. But when she notices you're staring, she stops and like steps away and puts the sword down as if she's intruded on something.
I think the Starosta gives her a small smile. She'll walk forward and take up the sword and then, do like a few, swings to kind of show her and look at her and say, you're fighting against the weight. You have to let it lead you. Again, like a few sort of uh like test swings to show, and then she'll flip it over and hand her the sword back.
She bows her head, takes the sword, and steps back into formation. You mentioned wanting to see a Silver and Adramir scene?
Yeah, I think I have a little idea for it.
Sure, frame it up.
I think maybe if you're okay with it, Ben, maybe it's like either we're sort of doing like something that is necessary, like making up poultices or something, like some kind of task where we don't really have to pay attention, but it does need to be done. But it's kind of like this boring, just menial task. And I think maybe you're doing that, and Silver kind of approaches just like this little like this little sit where her feet go up on the bench too, and her knees are like up all the way to her shoulders, and she's sort of leaning in between them. It doesn't look comfortable, but she does this a lot, so maybe to her it is. Who knows? And I think she too will sort of start to collect the herbs and start to help you, which, she's a scout. She knows what herbs mean and what they can do. So you're probably okay with trusting her with this. And then I think she will say, it marked you.
Adramir will sit there without responding for just about on the edge of did he hear me? Before he'll say, yes. Not the attention I was hoping to receive, but beggars can't be choosers.
She kind of tilts her head again, like I think sort of the same, like slightly awkward, slightly too long pause. And then she will say, what attention do you want?
The easy kind that does not wish to turn me into ravenous undead. I'm
Yes.
fairly easy to please.
It is not a dishonor to be hunted, to be worthy prey.
No, not a dishonor, but certainly uncomfortable.
She looks like she's like genuinely considering that, like that hadn't occurred to her. Maybe it's uncomfortable to be hunted. And I think after a moment she says, Sense can be lost. Even smart animals can be tricked.
And hunters can become hunted.
She will smile, and I think we sort of hear like a crunch of whatever like seats were cracking open as she just smiles at that. I think that's a good. I have nothing more that I want from that scene.
Andromir. There's no really good way to. The wrong way to word this question is like, how do you feel Breaker's mark on you? Or how do you feel that, like, how do things feel different after that witch stared at you and you realize that, like, something has changed? What is it?
The dreams. It's like every night since then, even in otherwise unrelated dreams, mostly bad, but even the neutral or good ones, it replays, even if it's just in the corner of his mind's eye. He can feel the watching, and I don't think he believes there's anything psychic or supernatural about this, just that his unconscious even knows that this is true and won't let him forget. Or maybe there is something psychic and he needs to be more concerned. Maybe he has talked to some of the others about it, so it's not going to be a surprise, but he doesn't think that's the case.
Who is Adremir's, oh man, what a question. Who is Adremir's like favorite or most recognized Barton member of the Legion?
Barton, member of the Legion. I think that would probably be.
Can come from any rank, be specialist, uh, legionnaire, officer, man staff.
Yeah. What is? No, she's not Barton.
Kirish, Nuri,
Wouldn't be.
Not Zaya. We don't have a lot of
I don't.
Bartons. We might need a
Yeah.
new Barton. Oh, Rajani is Barton. Rajani Katya. Um,
Where are they?
Emberwolves are the only named Emberwolf right now.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Or we can create a new one if you want.
Oh, who's on the squad with Cole? Is there one in there? Yeah,
No,
maybe it is
there's
Zaya.
no,
No,
Zaya's
she's yeah.
Zemyeti. I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, Zaya, that's a Barton name. Then the Brightheart gave it away.
Uh, yeah, maybe it is Kirish. Maybe he's got a bit of a soft spot for the
For the
just a
kid.
kid.
Yeah. Um, I think as a specialist. Oh, actually, no, we're gonna do this. It's so you're in the medic tent, treating some of these burn victims from that undead raid. And Senehiraja, the Mercy, um, suddenly like turns and just leaves the medic tent and starts heading towards the west in a way that suggests that she might be like in a trance. Like there's something about the way that she walks that's just natural.
Given the events with Voyus fairly recently, I think that that kind of behavior would be something most people would probably be on the lookout for, or at least would notice. And so he was probably taking stock of the medical supplies, but when she departs, he will get up and follow at a bit of a just a slight distance. He's not trying to hide from her, but is, I think, trying to see how this is going to play out for a little bit.
Yeah, you walk out and it's just thick fog, just the kind of fog you can cut with a knife. Um, and at one point, like you think you lose her for a moment, and then you turn around and, or you turn and she's there again. And she's doing the creepy horror movie standing with her back facing to you. Um, sort of deal. And when she says your name, Adramir, it comes accompanied by the rumble of thunder. And when she turns to face you, you only see half of her face under her cowl. Her, Bartons wear that sort of like cloth hood. Um, and she only shows you half of her face. And it's a Barton woman, but not one that you've seen before.
Adramir won't smile, but he'll kind of dip his head politely and say, "To what do I owe the honor, Breaker?"
You see like the one half of her mouth that you can see sort of curls upward into a smile. She says, I've had my eye on you.
Just one.
She turns her head a little bit more, and you see the whole other side of her face is like two-face scarred, just pocked, uh, Hollywood version of burn scars. Um, when she turns and takes a step towards you, there's this iconic rattle because most Bartons they weave like glass beads and forget-me-nots into their hair and clothing from friends and family that have, you give somebody a friendship bead and they put it in their hair. Um, and Bartons sometimes will have this, annoyingly enough, the stealth missions, this sometimes this little rattle, and there's tricks and things they do, but they refuse to like cut them out. Um, they've just found ways to mute them. But Breaker has perverted this tradition, and instead of beads, they're bones of her family and friends that have been sewn into her clothing and her hair. And so they do rattle. And as a medic, you know what the sound of bones sounds like. Um, she says, you know you can't win.
Do I? I am a very stubborn man.
Stubbornness is not survival.
Survival isn't winning.
So even if you do manage to stop the undead, which you can't, not in your state, what happens after won't be living, won't be surviving.
Have you come to warn me or Is there a different purpose to this visit?
I'd like to make you an offer.
Let's hear it.
Turn the Legion over to me and give me the Horned One, and I will keep you safe from what comes next.
I wouldn't know what to do with safe. Safe is not where I live. I have an offer for you.
She tilts her head slightly in a way that almost reminds you of Silver. Not quite full owl can't, but just the act itself.
Turn away from the Cinder King. We will help make right what you have wronged. Alternatively, go fuck yourself.
She takes a deep breath and pats her hands on her dress and nods and says, "You'll come around."
I am very stubborn.
And that's going to make these next few months all the more painful. And I apologize for what is going to happen. But I cannot stop it. I cannot turn away, and I cannot stop the flames. Ask the Dar. And before you know it, you are standing back in the medic tent where you had been inventorying medic supplies. Like your hands are still like up. You might have been about to like write something on a tablet and your hands are still like held up. And Senaharaja is, you see her kind of like poke her head around and she goes, "Are you all right?"
He is going to, you see him squeezing that gauze because his hands are just trembling now. And he'll look up with a sharp inhale and say, I need to speak to the commander.
We see you in the, we see Adramir in the command tent.
He'll relay the dream. We need to move. Yesterday, preferably, but today will do.
We need to find out where we're moving first and what's waiting for us, but we will move soon enough.
She apologized, Commander.
Did the apology feel genuine?
Yes. She said she cannot turn away. Not, will not, cannot.
Perhaps there's an opportunity there then.
We need to live long enough to seize it.
I'll do my best.
He'll nod his head and start to back out of the tent. Commander, if this is a thing she can do, it is because of what the witch marked me with. Someone should have an eye on me.
I'll keep an eye on you.
Good. And then he'll leave.
And she delivers that line softer than I did, I think.
Commander, I find this a little interesting. We have the situation with Adramir that is developing now, it seems, but also Voyus has a connection to a hext that hasn't marked him. He's been checked for hexes. That's
Mhm.
uh Admir knows what he's working with. It was a pretty thorough check to make sure that there were no unholy blemishes or marks on his skin. And so far as you can tell, Elia has not hexed him. But he's also been in close contact with the undead.
Mhm.
And again, there's a question here that like I mean, the leading version of the question is the commander taking any precautions towards supernatural influences on the Legion, but I feel like that's a more leading question than I want it to be. So I'll just ask for now, like, how does the commander feel about this new development?
I think the commander is aware that the hold that the undead might have may not be as absolute as they think. But I think there's just a lot of other things to keep their attention busy. They don't have enough time to do a lot of investigation or science on that, right?
What is on the commander's mind, just curiously? What has
Um,
been the commander's like focus lately?
yeah, I think clearing, making sure the way east is clear,
Sure.
making sure we know what is coming for us, and making sure that we don't get, I mean, holding back the tide as we as we go, just trying to minimize our losses. And um, people are going to get lost as the undead advance, and I don't think the commander feels like it's her job to manage those, but and I don't think there's really any minimizing them, but I think just kind of like emotionally girding the Legion to, like, when we have to move, even though that means our horse friends are going to get killed, probably, we have to move. We can't just stay and fight.
Speaking of friends, um, yeah, I think coming in from the west is this small group of Aldermani hunters. Um, they're not on horses. I think the reason that it's been taking them so long to get here is because they fucking walked the whole way and they took back trails and stayed off the main roads. But yeah, coming into Sunstrider camp is a small group of hunters from various different ethnicities. In a different story, in a side story, they might be their own protagonists, their own multicultural group. There's probably five, six, maybe seven of them, but among them are Dominik Trenker and Emerald Watching Wave. Um, and uh, like many other refugees, they find their own little kind of corner of camp, but there in the evening when people gather in the larger tents in the middle, they're out there and um does anybody want to play Ritter? Jazzy played him last, but fun thing about troop play is anybody can sort of pick him up. Um,
I'm fine handing him over if somebody wants him.
or we can pass over. Dominic uh and and Ritter have a moment. All
I
right.
need to remind myself. I feel like I've blended some of the characters together. I don't remember Ritter's.
Ritter's your heavy. Ritter Sinopus Keln was Jack's character.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um
And were we last last sort of left him was on the mission to destroy the Heartless. He got really badly beat, and Zaya kind of lost some faith in him, and he like clocked that. He took his first trauma, and he's not been doing super great.
Oh, that's
Right.
right. Yeah, Ritter took trauma.
Yeah. So he's been like um recovering sort of in the background. Um yeah, last time we saw him he was pretty wasn't doing too hot. Mostly emotionally. So his wounds are fine.
I will say, somebody either in a conversation with John Harper, I think it was John Harper. So this is more Blades in the Dark, but because this game uses the same system, somebody did suggest a therapy, being able to undo trauma as a long-term project.
I mean, the idea of the long-term projects is basically you can make them anything
Yeah,
pretty
you
much.
can you
So
can you can break the game, quote unquote. So yeah, there's nothing written that lets you undo trauma, but long-term projects let you do things that are not written about. So take it that what you will. Um, but yeah, how do we think we also don't necessarily have to play this out. We can also just talk about it in abstraction if we want to. But how does like Ritter and Dominik's re-meeting go, do we think?
did we establish what their connection had been before?
Yeah, they used to be hunting friends. Um, historians will call them best friends. No, they were just hunting friends because I think I explicitly was like, "Oh, ex-boyfriend, no, I'm gonna be better." So, yeah, they were hunting friends, but their relationship was left on a sort of rocky note when I think a third party friend um got hurt because Ritter was maybe showboating a bit or like pushing a bit too hard during a hunt, um which led to some yeah, to like maybe making a wrong choice or not turning back when they should have. So nothing I think like too major destructively, potentially. Like depends, I think, on how hard we want to push that. But yeah, like we were friends, but it's a bit rocky right now.
And I imagine Ritter being cold isn't going to help that.
Yeah, when they parted ways at the end of that mission, when you got back to the hunting lodge, the Legionnaires probably went back to the Legion, and they probably went to hide in the fucking mountains. Um, or they might have actually made it back to Plainsworth, I think. But they definitely didn't leave at the same time as the Legion. Uh, but yeah, maybe Dominik comes to camp then, comes to the Legion partition of Sunstrider camp. Um, and just kind of like sheepishly is like, uh, is Ritter around? Is Sinopus Kellen? It's all right, big guy.
I imagine just like some rookie with like sort of this like immediately startled. Yeah, just goes like like very much in a please don't ask me more. Just like points at a tent maybe. Or sort of the edge of camp, maybe now that he's like no longer physically hurt. I imagine that maybe he is like kind of overcompensating in what he feels like I was weak and that has like had bad results. So maybe like we see him like clearly not in any shape to do so, but doing like push-ups or whatever, and the rookie just kind of goes like with this face of I wouldn't if I were you. And just like skedaddles out before they get asked anything more.
Yeah, Dominik walks over and is just, hey,
I feel like I just played a grumpy man, sad grumpy man. So I'll let someone else play Ritter.
You wanna play Ritter, Mark?
Yeah, I'll
You
take him.
wanna get him?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
We made it. So you did too.
Mostly.
Yeah.
You're in better shape than I was when I came back.
Uh, looks can be deceiving. 14 days of back trails. I love my country. I love Aldermark, but what they're doing to it is it's like watching a sunset when you know there's no dawn coming. It's not going to look the same in the morning,
If morning comes at all.
if morning comes at all. We saw what they did to Plainsworth. Is let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about the war.
What would you rather talk about?
And it's funny, I don't know. I
What else is there?
hunting. Why don't we go hunting? You and me. Let's get out of camp a little bit. Let's there's no lodge, but we could take a day's ride out. What do you think?
The camp is my lodge.
Well, then we can ride out from here. I can't stand seeing you like this.
Like what?
Cold. Haunted.
I'm surprised I'm alone in that. How can you just see what's going on and pretend it's not happening?
It's not about pretending. I think it's about knowing what's happening in the same way that knowing we're all going to die someday. Well, does that stop us from finding beauty in the world? I said I love my country. I love the mountains, the forests, the hills. It's all I said it's like a sunset, but isn't that the most beautiful time of day? We should be finding beauty. We should be celebrating what beauty we have left because it might not be here tomorrow. We should be out there looking for the ephemeral beauty. And we don't look at the rainbow and think how awful that this won't be here in a few hours. I'm not saying ignore the well, he gestures vaguely to the west. Hunting is about finding the beauty of the natural world.
And killing it.
The excuse. Tradition. We've hunting is what gave us society. It's what let us continue to flourish. You're not a vegetarian, are you?
I wonder how that makes us different from the dead then. They're not senseless. They're not animals or beasts. It's not a force of nature that drives them forward. There's a purpose or a meaning or desire. Do they love what they do? Do they love burning us out, bringing the darkness. Does that bring them joy?
I've probably not killed nearly as many undead as you have, but the ones that I have seen, I don't think there's anything there. I don't think there's any joy, hunger, perhaps.
Well, let's go hunting then. And he looks out to the west. Let's see if we can find out.
I think it's easy enough for you guys to requisition horses and uh a couple either bows or rifles, whichever is your accoutrement of choice.
Yeah, rifle, I think.
Do you go hunting for undead or do you go
Yes,
hunting?
absolutely.
Even as you go like riding, well, I guess you tell me, do you go riding for the undead lines?
Think so. Yeah, not like directly to, well, like towards, so that we are inevitably going
Yeah.
to encounter something.
So you probably go then into like the Blackwood, which
Yeah.
again is just that little wood to the west of Sunstrider. Paint the scene for me, everyone. Just describe like a bit of the natural beauty that's still left in the world, even as the undead press onwards. Maybe it's something preserved or something they haven't gotten to yet, but something in this forest that's just naturally beautiful that we see Dominik and the Ritter go riding by on their horses.
I think we see sort of as you're trekking these lines, there's like these, because it's been raining so much, there's like these footprints, and they're like kind of, dragging, so they're from undead. Um, there are these like sort of longer lines, and I think one has like sort of filled up with a puddle, and as you're looking at them, like one of those like little robin birds just like drops down in it, has a little bat, one wing up, and just for a moment is like using these that sign of destruction of this army marching through. It's just a little pool.
The autumn sun is casting not quite golden hour, but it's still a warmer, more golden light than earlier in the year. And it's filtering through the leaves, casting those little speckles on the ground as they ride.
I think there's still birdsong in the canopy. There's hunting animals are probably pretty either driven out or taken care of one way or the other. But I think birds are, aside from here and there, more or less like the only sign of like animals that are in the area.
And you do indeed, maybe you come across a oh, you wouldn't come across just a hound unoccupied by like their handler. Um, Maybe it's some more of these burned. Let me get a picture of those. So we have art. Yeah, you come across maybe even the camp that the horse people missed. Um, but I gave you the beauty, now it's time for the beast. But you come across this like copse of trees, and people have been like the trees have been like shorn of all of their branches, and the pointed, sharpened trunk has been basically run through them like a stake, or they've been plonked on it like a stake. And these trees then get struck by lightning over and over and over again with the corpses on them, and that's what gives them this sort of like build up static charge. But you find, one of these copses of trees. Do you just take the time to destroy it?
I think Ritter kind of prods him like not seriously, but like, why don't you go ask, see if you can get an answer before we burn it all down.
Dominik shakes his head and says, "We shouldn't be here. We came too far."
Okay.
And he's gonna just turn around. He's not a soldier. This is he's gonna take the safe route and try and head back to town.
Yeah. Ritter will finish him off then.
Cool. I don't know if I need too much anything else out of that scene necessarily. I'm happy with what I got.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We are at 4:20, or 20 after the hour, wherever you are, across the world. Anything else that anybody wants to see, or are we good wrapping this session here, and I'll go generate some missions and we'll get back into it. Cool. Let me open up my Stars and Wishes tab, and we'll do some Stars and Wishes. Do-do-do. Right. Thank you for playing, everyone. I had a lot of fun this session. But yeah, if you have any Stars and Wishes, I would love to hear them.
I'll star first the system. I really like the bookkeeping. I don't know what that says about me, but maybe it doesn't come as a shock to people who know my life is spreadsheets. But I quite enjoy that, and it's fun to discuss it and to see the decisions being made and think about how those are going to play out and affect the world as we continue to move within it. The little vignettes, they were all small and but also they felt like we learned a lot about the different characters even in those small little scenes. The connections were building up between them, and I will admit this is my first like troop play that I am aware of, and that I can recall, or at least the first troop play where we're actually doing the troop thing. And I'm having a bit of friction internally, like, but what if I don't play Ritter right? And I know that's something I have to let go of, but I'm working on that. So wish for me to work on that. The the little scene with the commander and specifically, Mark, when you amended that she would have said that softer than you did, that just said so much right there, and I liked that. The dream scene was great and unexpected, and the little insight into Breaker is interesting, and we should start a long-term project to fix her. The Jazzy getting to the glimpse of Silver. So yeah, Silver, and the connection there that might be building with Adramir was fun, and also just going into the detail about how she sits and really the physical presence that she exudes was a really good detail, and I appreciated that. I'm looking forward to seeing more now that we're moving into autumn and PSL season. Looking forward to seeing how that changes not just the mechanical. I guess I'm looking forward to seeing more autumn in this game. We've seen fall, and it's a dark fantasy, so it's all going to be brown and muddy anyway. But having that kind of narrative through line of time passing is going to be interesting, and I hope we continue to feel it, even aside from the pressure that it will put upon us. Also, we got fire mains, and I'm excited.
I'll go. This was a lot of fun. It felt more, yeah, how do I describe it? Yeah, the less directed part of playing feels really fun because it's just like a nice broad just like buffet of all the fun little bits. I also am a big fan of the bookkeeping, so it's yeah, so much great color all around from everyone, with like the details of the seasons and the food and the bits of background and culture and whatnot. I have a note that looks like it says rock, but I don't think that means anything. I like the big Uncle Eero vibes there with the tea and just being like charming and but also crafty. It's great. And yeah, making the animal friends. Back when birds used to not be evil. Love it. Yeah. I like the long-term project of the mobile farm. It's a really like neat, like it feels almost like not incongruous with the setting, but it's like something you don't usually see in this kind of like this flavor of fantasy, which is pretty cool. And yeah, love seeing all the details and insight on Breaker. And definitely want to like see if we can find that place to wedge in and maybe move them a little bit. And the true play thing I really enjoy as a like not forever but very often GM. It's just like, oh, it's like I play a bunch of characters every day. So it's kind of nice to like not only get to play a bunch of different characters, but get to share that responsibility with other people playing those same characters is a really good feeling.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can sit like like Silver, because it's a description of how it's like one of my comfort sits, but I don't think you can see it. Basically like doing this. Which I love to sit like this. And like when I like at school, like this is how I used to eat my lunch. And I was just sitting there like sort of gremlin style. So I just, yeah. It was so fun to me because I feel like Silver is like just weird. But like, yeah, in like a way where I don't want to say like she's not quite human because I feel like that's gross given the Panur's like traits, but like just being a little weirdo in this and being awkward, but then also being like, hey, you're my friend and something really scary happened to you. But I like Adremir's sort of acceptance of this weirdness and just going along with it, which felt very true. And yeah, interesting to sort of get these different relationships and get the vignettes for that. The dream was really cool. I love to, yeah, but I'm really stubborn. I'm just like, but then also um, saying that when the dream ended, his hands were just trembling. That was a really fun choice to sort of have like both of these things. Like, yes, I'll present myself as very controlled and stubborn and like, I don't give a fuck, but I'm actually terrified because you're fucking Breaker and you're talking to me and I don't want to know. Thank you. Goodbye now. That was great. Yeah, every mention of Waib is just, I love him. is just everybody's favorite grandpa, but also makes you sell things that you don't want to. And I liked you saying that so that we could like sort of have our characters react to that and give a like a little bit of the hint to a relationship in that way. Um, yeah, Mark, I think you've been really setting a great example or like a something to look up to when it comes to the troop style play, because I'm definitely with Ben where I'm like, I'm feeling either like, oh, I'm hoarding this character and I shouldn't be playing them all the time. Or I'm like, but what if I play this character and I do it wrong? And then I'm also like, you can't do it wrong because I don't know, if something out of character happens, then now it's in character, right? Like they're not fixed, they're people. They can change. Um, so yeah, that was really fun. I especially like that little speech of when the undead kill us, do they feel joy? Do they get anything out of it, or it's just something they do? Because like at the very start, like Jack was kind of playing them as like almost like this erudite or like this educated kind of knight at times. Like there were like these glimpses of like something more noble and like more than just a muscle. And like that really harkened back to that and sort of brought that back in a way that was fun. Forgiven, I really like Dominik's change of treating Ritter, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna throw shit at you when we meet, but now that I see that something's actually wrong, I want to get you out of this because it was fun to throw barbs at you when you showed up unexpected, but now I can see that something's broken and I don't like that. I don't want that for you. So that was a really great moment. I love Horse Girly. What's her name? Tsaga? Saya? I love her. I love her. I hope we get to see more of her. I hope she calls us all dirt. She's just like, y'all fucking cowards, bitches. And just plays like metal music until 1 a.m. because she doesn't care. She's the best. I love her. Yeah, I think you just do so great, like having that character shine through and the detail of the bards like testing out their verses so they can sing the coolest song is just so funny. Like, what are you doing? People are dying. Just a great little detail. Um, wishes. The moment with the Dar was also really cool. Sort of that, like, I like that it was kind of left vague and unresolved in a sense. Like, she didn't officially join or not join. There was just like this little moment of connection that I thought was very interesting. So I guess wish is yeah, like see if that goes anywhere or see if there's more of those just those little moments that don't necessarily have to be like a big story stepping stone. But I like that we can sort of just see like these are just things that happen, just little glimpses, and some of them will go somewhere and some of them won't, and that's okay. Um, Other than that, yeah, I think I'm with Ben. I also want to get better at actually doing the troop style play. Also, I mean, you gave me a sad, yearning night. I want to see my sad, yearning night because I don't have any of those in any games that I play. It's just I've been starved. So I definitely want to see if we can get Voyus to do something soon.
Honestly, truly, I think troop style play, like the characters that you made, you're always going to be a little bit attached to. And if somebody else made them, it gets a little harder to like you feel that little that chafing. That's I think normal. I don't know if that ever fully goes away, but yeah, that's really common in my experience. I think where true play starts to kick is with stuff like Voyous, where it's like nobody nobody made him. He's from the setting, he's from the game. So really anybody can kind of pick him up. So I'm really curious to see like who will play Voyous, how they'll play him, and then if somebody else plays him, how they'll like work into that because there's less of a feeling of like am I doing it right when there's less to go off of. If that makes sense. At least to me, that's when it clicked for me, is when we got voice in our game and we had like a few different people play him. So yeah, I think all of that is valid. And you shouldn't feel bad. Um, True play, use it as much as you want to or like to, and if the honest reaction is I don't, then that's fine too. We'll carry on. But also, Jazzy, I definitely want to call it, like, I think you hit the nail on the head, where it's like, particularly in these back at camp, these vignettes, my intent is just to kind of like put stuff in the room and see what you guys are interested in. And if you follow up on it, fantastic. If not, I'm just here to remind you that, like, oh yeah, the Dar are in our camp. And, uh yeah, if you want to follow up on that, or if you want to see uh more stuff there, it's there to have. Um so yeah, I think that's all awesome. Um uh they could do a long-term project to recruit the Dar, if you wanted to. Uh, I'll just tell you right now, they're specialist quality. Uh, if you wanted to try recruiting the Dar, it might be two long-term projects, but they're not going to be both 8 clocks. One you might have to convince, like, I think Spikes is the easy candidate here. She's the one who from the beginning has always shown the most interest in the Legion and staying and continuing the fight. You might have to convince her, which might be its own long-term project, like a 4 clock long-term project, but dealing with the problem of their wasting disease. And that might be an alchemical long-term project to find a way to prolong their lifespan. And if you can do both of those things, yeah, we did it. We had it in our game. I'd be willing to give you guys like a specialist, either like a new scout or something. I feel like scout makes sense for what the Dar have been presented as. But yeah, if that's something you want to pursue, let me know. Um, Anyways, Starsies and Wishies. Uh, um, I wrote down Valentina, and I think what I wrote that down for was that, like, my star is about. I made a joke about it earlier, but like character continuity, where it's like, oh, it says they're mourning for Simon Fairley, and it's like, oh yeah, Simon died in the first mission, and it's like, oh yeah, that's a thing that happened, and these characters, um first of all, Jazzy, what you're doing with the Marshall and putting like these little notes and stories on these sheets is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if I've given you a star for that yet, but if not, here it is. But also, when these stories happen in play and in game, they hit, the little conversation about Valentina being like, oh yeah, she's the rookie that almost fired at the bandits, or that little conversation we had about, reminding ourselves of the relationship between Ritter and Dominik. And it's like that all happened in game. That's, to me, that is so cool. Um, I love that. When we have these little snippets of history and we start to recognize these characters for their deeds, even if they're something tiny and insignificant, or seemingly at the time. Um, to me, that's what make these come to life. And in a strange roundabout way, it also makes the deaths feel more. Um, yeah. So yeah, I love that about this game. I also love just like the balance and the back and forth between like high energy, high tension mission phase, slice of life campaign phase. And you get a little bit of both. And to me, it's like that happy medium. I love games that give me both. And if they happen organically, great. I love that we kind of get both in this game. But I also love in our game specifically how in the mission phase, last mission phase, we had a little kind of like mini downtime in the middle, a little like low tension period, and in the middle of our downtime phase here we had an undead fight. And it's just, I don't know, it's cool how that sort of like weird dichotomy works. Yeah. um Yeah, I agree with the quartermaster being everybody's favorite grandpa. What a wonderful line. I started during the session, but when the birds weren't evil, was fantastic. Uh, Ritter's line of when the undead kill us, do they feel joy? Just choice. Uh, I loved getting to play Breaker. Oh my God, we got to learn so much about Breaker for somebody who's been so like not the focus of the campaign. This has been a very render heavy campaign up until now with just like little bits and pieces of Breaker. We learned so much about Breaker now to where I almost feel like I know it's just because it was this session, but I'm like, wow, this is a Breaker game now. So that was super fun, exciting, and of course my wish is going to be to continue playing up that. Now that direct contact has been made and is in the room, where is it gonna go? I have no clue. We play to find out. Oh yeah, yeah, we can get Zemya back in. I was actually just thinking of ways to get Zemya involved. I'll add that to wishes. Actually not Zemya, Zenya. God, game, why does everybody have the same name? If it's not Silver, it's Zenya or Zemya. Um, cool. Um, I'm sure I have other stars and wishes, but I cannot think of them. Also, yeah, just start to you guys. Like I asked a lot of questions today. It's kind of my favorite GMing style is just to like, especially when the game gives me excuse to, is to like help me make this world in the little things, in the food that you eat, in the temperature change and stuff like that. There's sometimes not a lot of mechanical stuff I can do. I'll see what I can do about getting autumn involved. I know winter is like when things like you might have noticed in some of your loads, winter clothing is a thing you can take. It's not important in every mission, and it might not, depending on how fast we go, it might never truly become important. But yeah, I'll see if there's mechanical ways to reflect that, but in the absence of that, I really wanted to make sure that like we felt autumn and you guys, brought it alive with your responses to those questions. So thank you for playing ball in that regard. And yeah, I love all of your responses to, anytime I throw the ball at you guys, it's, playing a game of tennis of hitting it back. And I love sessions like the one we had today for all of that. Um, and and then we get back to killing. So that's the fun of this game. Um, yeah. If I have any other stars and wishes, I'll put them on the Discord, which I look forward to seeing you all there. Anybody else have any starsies and wishes?
No, I just wanted to say as a reminder, I will be here next week, but not the week after. I'm out on the
Fantastic.
8th of October.
All righty. Good to know. Anything else?
Thank you for
Alrighty.
running.
Yeah. I'll generate some missions. I'll try and have them up by tonight, including your special mission. So I will see you all there. Bye.
Bye.